Chapter 18 divided by 3 plus 1. The next morning, even before I had reached the kitchen, I could tell by the clangs and clatters that Dad was whipping up a batch of pancakes. When I got there, he was beating some eggs in a metal bowl. "Hey, just in time to give me a hand." He nodded his head toward an empty measuring cup on the counter. "Pour 8 ounces of milk in there for me, okay?" "Sure." I felt a jolt of panic as I grabbed the milk from the fridge, but when I looked at the measuring cup, I realized I didn't need math for this. I just had to fill the cup up to the number 8. The cup could just as easily have been marked with letters of the alphabet or pictures of fruit. "Great, thanks," Dad said. As I started to walk away, he added, "Now pour half of it into the mixing bowl." "Half?" I came back and stared at the cup. "What's half of 8? I had no idea. My only hope was to knock over the cup when I reached for it. That would make a mess, but it would also help keep my secret. "Hurry up, I need 4 ounces," Dad said. I felt the tension run out of my body like spilled milk. I knew 8 minus 4 equals 4. I'm sure Cypher would have something clever to say about the 2 4s. I didn't. I poured the milk and scurried upstairs. I figured I'd stay out of sight until it was time to eat, and then I'd keep my mouth stuffed as much as I could so I wouldn't have to answer any questions. "Is this enough?" I turned and saw Kaylee holding out a handful of pennies and nickels. I didn't tense up at the question. I could count the coins. That was no problem now. "Enough for what?" I asked. "For 6 pencils at the school store," she said. "That's how many colors they have. 6. They cost 12 cents each." Oh no. The panic started to come back. I couldn't tell my little sister I didn't know the answer. Think. 1 pencil costs 12 cents. She wants 6 pencils. "Do you really need more than 1? I asked her. I realized I didn't need to multiply. Just like I'd managed to divide the wings by subtracting over and over, I could add the cost of 1 pencil at a time until I'd counted up the price of 6 of them. "You can count to 6, right?" I asked Callie. "I can count to 9 million zillion," she said. "Great. I'll count the money for each pencil," I told her. "You count how many pencils." And that's how we figured it out. 1 pencil cost 12 cents. The second one added another 12 cents. That was 24. The third added 12, again making 36. "You need 72 cents, I told her, "and you have 85 cents. So, do you have enough?" I knew the answer, but I thought it would be good for her to think about that part. "Yeah, thank you, Logan. You're so smart." Wow. Adding was like multiplying, except a whole lot slower. That was sort of like what Dr. Thagoras had told us. You could write any number just using slashes or zeros and ones, but it would be a lot longer. I got through breakfast without any more math problems and then grabbed my backpack and headed for school. Benedict met up with me on the way. "Last night was terrible," he said. "Who knew you needed so much math to play video games?" Then I tried to play Scrabble with my dad. I was doing great until I played on a triple word score square. "Class is going to be terrible if Miss Froctali wants us to work on multiplication," I said. "We don't have math until the end of the day," Benedict said. "I've got it all figured out. You'll have to break your leg right before then, but at least you won't miss lunch. I'll help you to the nurse's office, and then we can go to the museum right after school." "On my broken leg?" I asked. "Are you planning to carry me?" Good point," Benedict said. "Make it an arm." "I'm not breaking an arm or a leg," I said. "Finger?" he asked. "No way." "Fingernail?" "No, stop it. I'm not breaking anything. We'll get through this somehow. It's not like you've never been in trouble. Come on, I want to get to class before Miss Froctali does." I had a reason for that. When I reached my desk, I sat down and watched Miss Froctali come in. After she put her purse in the locker, she started to put her key on her desk, but then she went to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. She left the key on the tray. After she wrote a reminder about the test, she put the marker down right on top of the key. That was good. The more times I found her key for her, the better chance I had she'd take it easy on me if I ever got into big trouble. Benedict was right that we didn't have our math lesson until the end of the day, but we were both wrong if we thought there'd be no math until then. I never realized how much math we did in school. Here are just some of the things we had to figure out before it was time for our actual math lesson. In social studies, we had to figure out how many weeks Columbus's first voyage lasted. Luckily, I could do that. For our science lesson, we watched a film about how they calculate the number of calories in different foods. It involved a lot of multiplying and dividing. Luckily, we didn't have to do the math ourselves. We practiced the long jump in gym class. Each of us jumped 3 times. Our teacher, Mr. James, told us the average length of our jumps. Luckily, he did the math. For lunch, they had tacos in the cafeteria. I wanted to buy 3. Luckily, I'd already learned I could add things instead of multiplying. Even more luckily, I didn't want 20. In art, we had to divide a circle into 8 equal sections before we colored it. Luckily, I was able to watch the other kids at my table and do what they did, even though I didn't understand how I ended up with the right number of sections. In music, we learned about 3/4 time. Luckily, Miss Fourier likes to talk so much that she didn't have us do anything. Even so, my head was starting to hurt. And then, unluckily, it was time for math. Miss Fractali grabbed a marker, but not the one that hid her key, and wrote a multiplication problem on the board. 127 times 12 equals... All right, class, who wants to solve the problem? Hands shot up around me so fast that I figured it had to be an easy problem. But all I could do was stare at the numbers. If I had to, I could add 127 to itself until I had 12 of them. But there's no way I could do that in front of the class. I looked around the room. Only 2 hands weren't up and waving, mine and Benedict's. Maybe it was better to lose myself in a sea of raised hands than stand out as someone who didn't want to go to court. I lifted my hand, but made sure not to wave it around. Miss Fractali looked at me. Pick someone else, I thought. Please pick someone else. She looked past me. I relaxed. She spoke. Benedict? Me? He wailed from his seat 2 rows behind me. You. She held out the marker. He shot me a terrified look as he walked up the aisle. It was bad enough he couldn't do the problem. It was terrible he'd fail in front of the whole class. He'd be reminded of it for the rest of the year. Benedict was almost next to me now. He'd done something amazingly brave last year to save me from a dreadful punishment. It was my turn to save him. I could only think of one thing to do. It was risky, and it would definitely get me in trouble. But he was my best friend. There was no question in my mind. I'd do it. I let out a loud yawn, stretched my shoulders back, and stuck my foot out as he went